Hey guys, tonight we step back, way back, to a time when the very idea of history was still a few million years in the making. You're standing in a place that will one day be called East Africa, though no one here has invented maps yet. The sun is already a giant gold coin climbing into a washed-out sky, and the grasslands stretch like a rough, sun-bleached carpet in every direction. The air smells of dust and dry earth, with a hint of something musky drifting from the brush. Something alive, and probably not friendly. You've got no shoes, no backpack, no sunscreen, except maybe a smear of crocodile dung, which frankly is not FDA approved. And I'll be honest, you probably won't survive this week. This image will stay with you for 30 more seconds, then gently fade into darkness. May you have a night of complete peace, where all thoughts let go and only calm remains. You walk slowly, half because of the uneven ground, half because every few steps you're scanning for movement in the tall grass. A rustle could be a breeze, or it could be something with teeth longer than your hand. Somewhere to the east, a family of Australopithecus moves in a loose knot, your group for the day. They're small compared to modern humans, with longer arms and a gait that swings somewhere between walking and climbing. But their eyes, your eyes, are sharp, flicking from tree to termite mound to horizon. Out here, vigilance is as necessary as food. The grass is waist-high, brushing against your sides, and it hides everything from snakes to hares to the spotted back of a leopard. Historians still argue whether Australopithecus was more at home in trees or on the ground, but today, there's no question. You're on the ground because the nearest tree is too far to be helpful. That fact keeps your pulse ticking a little faster. You pass a patch of bare earth baked hard under the sun. The ground is etched with tracks, some yours, some antelope, and some belonging to something heavier. The scent of it lingers, predator. Not far ahead, one of the elders of your group stops and crouches low, eyes fixed on a ripple in the grass. It's not a predator this time, just a warthog snuffling at the dirt. But even warthogs can get aggressive if cornered, so you give it a wide berth. The morning is for movement, not lounging. The heat later will turn the open savanna into a shimmering skillet. You feel the coolness of the early day slipping away as the sun climbs. But the sky is still wide and pale, the air dry and thin. Somewhere in the distance, a bird shrieks, a sound like metal scraping stone. Your group pauses, heads tilting to listen. Life here is a constant gamble. You're too slow to outrun most predators, too weak to fight them head on. What you have is awareness, memory, and the beginnings of cooperation. Even now, a quiet gesture, a tilt of the head, a sudden freeze, sends messages through the group without a word spoken. That warthog's presence means water nearby. Prey and predators alike need to drink. You move toward the hint of a stream, stepping over cracked ground and wiry plants. The smell of moisture arrives before the sound. Your mouth feels dry just thinking about it. But there's risk in water holes. Crocodiles, hippos, even lions will patrol the edges. The group slows, bodies lowering, eyes scanning the bank. A few small birds take off in a flutter from the shallows, and only then does the elder step forward to drink. Kneeling down, you cup water in your hands, It's warm, earthy, with tiny specks of floating debris. But it's life itself out here. A dragonfly zips past your face. The reflection on the surface ripples. Something moved under there. You lean back instinctively, keeping just enough distance in case a pair of toothy jaws decides you look interesting. The rest of the morning passes in a rhythm of walking, scanning, pausing. You notice how the land changes under your feet. Patches of sand near dried stream beds, cracked clay where water once lay, trampled paths that lead to seasonal fruit trees. A few years from now, or a few hundred, you'll recognize patterns of migration, both yours and those of the animals you share this land with. For now, it's instinct more than intellect. By midday, the heat sits heavy on your shoulders. The air wavers in front of you like it's about to peel open. You find the thin shade of an acacia tree, its branches twisted like old bones, and crouch in the dappled light. Nearby, two younger members of your group pick at a lump of hardened resin, chewing for the small hit of calories. Someone else is digging at the base of the tree for roots. You join in, scraping with a flake of stone until the fibrous stem loosens from the soil. It's bitter, but it fills your mouth with moisture. And in a place like this, that's a small victory. A vulture circles overhead, its dark shape sliding across the ground as it rides the warm air. That's a sign. Somewhere nearby, something is dead. You know from experience that the smell will hit soon, and when it does, it will attract more than just birds. There's a flicker of temptation in the group. Carrion means easy calories, but it also means stepping into someone else's kill zone. As the day leans toward afternoon, you can feel the weight of the savanna in your bones. Its dangers, its silences, its relentless pull to keep moving. This is your life, measured not by minutes or hours, but by the distance to safety, the nearness of food, and the thin edge of survival you walk every waking moment. The light shifts as afternoon approaches, the sun tilting just enough to throw longer shadows across the grass. You step out from the thin shade of the acacia and feel the heat still clinging to your skin, as though the air itself has been holding its breath since morning. Your stomach reminds you, rather rudely, that water is not the same as food. The hollow ache has been building all day, and now it's time to do something about it. The menu here is limited. Forget grocery aisles or farmers markets. Your shopping trip is a walk through the savanna with your eyes constantly scanning the ground, the branches, and anything that moves. First up, fruit. A few months ago, there were figs in this stretch of trees, but today the branches are bare except for a couple of dried husks clinging stubbornly near the top. One of the younger group members tries climbing but comes back empty-handed, save for a fistful of ants that were not part of the plan. So you move on. A low mound of churned soil catches your attention. Termite Hill. Now, in the modern world, you might consider this more fear factor than fine dining. But here, termites are protein. You find a stick, smooth on one end from wear, and poke it into the mound. The soil crumbles a little, revealing frantic movement inside. With a quick twist, you pull the stick out, coated in tiny wriggling bodies. You scrape them into your hand and toss them into your mouth before they scatter. They taste faintly nutty, with a crunch that could either be satisfying or unsettling, depending on how you frame it. Historians still argue whether Australopithecus used tools for tasks like this regularly or only when desperation called, but the evidence leans toward more frequent use. The stick in your hand feels familiar, shaped by habit, even if you couldn't explain the concept of habit yet. Moving on, you spot a patch of low, broad-leafed plants near a dip in the ground. Someone kneels to dig, loosening soil with a piece of stone until a tuber comes free. It's dirty, fibrous, and tastes like bland cardboard, but you chew slowly, swallowing the starch for the energy it will drip into your bloodstream later. A quick glance toward the horizon confirms no predators in sight. Yet, then comes the jackpot. A faint, unmistakable smell drifts toward you, riding the lazy breeze. Decay, your pulse ticks up. This could mean meat. The group shifts direction, weaving between clumps of grass until the source comes into view. A half-eaten antelope, ribs stark white where scavengers have picked clean. The kill is recent, maybe from last night. A few black-backed jackals loiter nearby, their tails twitching, eyes bright. They watch you the way you watch them, measuring risk, calculating the odds. One of your companions edges forward, waving arms and making a low grunt to push the jackals back. They scatter a few meters, but don't leave. They're patient, and they know you're not going to take everything. You kneel by the carcass and find a length of bone with scraps of sinew clinging to it. A sharp flake of stone pries a shred free. It's chewy, tough, with a taste that's part blood, part sun-baked leather, but you swallow it gratefully. Someone else cracks a leg bone against a rock, scooping the warm, fatty marrow with fingers. That's gold. Pure calories in a place where every bite matters. There's a quirky theory, more speculative than proven, that early scavenging like this might have trained your ancestors' senses to detect meat from far off, not just by smell, but by reading the patterns of scavenger movement. Watching those jackals, you can see how their behavior could point the way to a meal. Still, time at the carcass is short. Every minute here is a minute a larger predator could return. The group eats quickly, snatching what they can. You drop the bone when it's clean enough to shine and step back, letting the jackals slip in again. One of them glances at you with something between defiance and curiosity before lowering its head to the feast. The sun dips lower, heat easing slightly, though the air is still thick with the hum of insects. Your group starts moving again, slower now, full enough to think about resting instead of only hunting for the next bite. You pass a stand of thorny bushes where bright green pods hang low. These are tricky, edible if you know which ones to pick, disastrous if you don't. You tear one open, tasting the pulp. It's tangy, slightly sweet, and doesn't make your tongue itch, a good sign. By the time you find another acacia for shade, your stomach's protest has dulled to a murmur. Around you, the group sprawls in loose clusters, some grooming each other, some dozing. The smell of the antelope carcass still lingers faintly on your hands, mixed with the earthy tang of roots and the sharp bitterness of termite mound dust. This is the day's harvest, a little of everything. Nothing wasted. You lean back, feeling the dry ground under your spine, and watch the sky deepen to a richer blue. The shapes of vultures drift high above, still circling the earlier kill, their wings steady in the air. Somewhere out there, a predator is already on the hunt again, and you know tomorrow might start the same way, hungry, watchful, and ready to take whatever the land offers, whether it's sweet fruit, bitter roots, or the leftovers of someone else's dinner. The next morning begins with that strange mix of quiet and tension that always hangs over the savanna before the sun climbs high. The air feels lighter, cooler, almost forgiving, though you know it won't last. You stretch, shake the dust from your hair, and notice a flicker of movement on the far edge of your vision. At first you think it's just a bird darting through the grass, but no. This is something on 4 legs, moving with a purposeful trot. You crouch a little, shading your eyes. The animal is slim, its back level, fur a tawny gold broken by faint markings. The ears are upright, triangular. It's not a lion, not a hyena. It's one of the early wild canids, an ancestor of the African wild dog, or maybe something even earlier, like Usion, which roamed this land long before modern wolves or jackals appeared. The muzzle lifts toward the wind, nostrils twitching, then lowers again as it continues along a faint trail. Historians still argue whether these early canids paid much attention to hominins at all, or whether any interest was purely opportunistic. But as you watch, it's hard to ignore the way this one arcs its path slightly toward your direction, close enough to see you, far enough to keep an easy escape. Your group notices too. One of the elders makes a low, almost dismissive sound, a reminder that predators aren't the only ones who can be dangerous here. You keep moving, and the canid keeps its distance, weaving in and out of the grass like smoke through reeds. The land carries signs of life everywhere. Hoof prints pressed deep in soft earth. Droppings that tell you how fresh the trail is. The canid seems to know them better than you do, pausing at scents, veering toward clusters of bush where guinea fowl explode in a burst of wings. It doesn't give chase. Maybe it's not hunting right now. Or maybe, like you, it's saving energy for a bigger prize. Later, you see another. This one appears after a faint rumble in the distance. The low, bone-deep growl of lions at a kill. The sound fades quickly, but it's enough to draw the attention of scavengers from every direction. Vultures pivot in the sky, hyenas lope at an easy pace, and these canids, faster, lighter, thread through the spaces between. Their tails flick like pendulums, the tips flashing pale in the sun. A quirky observation someone might make millions of years later. These animals don't just move through the land, they read it, like flipping through the pages of a book. Every shift in wind, every mark in the dirt tells them something. Watching them is like watching the savanna think aloud. You and your group follow the general pull of movement, partly curiosity, partly the chance of scraps. By the time you reach a low rise, the lions are gone, the hyenas are feeding, and the canids hang back in that careful, almost polite way scavengers do when they know they're outranked. The hyenas snarl and crunch, their jaws powerful enough to split bone. The canids wait for the moment when the bigger scavengers are too busy squabbling to guard every scrap. You can relate. That's exactly how you approach the world too. Waiting, watching, slipping in for a morsel when the risk feels small enough. The canids move in 2s and 3s, darting forward to snatch a strip of hide or a gnawed bone, then darting back out of reach. Their timing is precise, almost rehearsed. It's in one of these pauses, while the hyenas are distracted, that you find yourself just a few body lengths away from one of the canids. It freezes, one paw lifted, eyes locked with yours. The look isn't exactly friendly, but it isn't the raw hostility of a predator deciding on a kill either. There's calculation there, a flicker of something that might, if you stretch the definition, be curiosity. Historians still debate whether such moments had any lasting impact, whether repeated proximity like this slowly carved a channel toward eventual trust, or if it was nothing more than coincidence written across centuries. But standing here, the hot breath of carrion in the air, you can almost imagine the earliest threads of connection weaving themselves between your kind and theirs. The rest of the day, you notice them more often. A lone canid pacing parallel to your path, a pair resting in the shade just beyond the range of comfort. They never come close enough to touch, but they're there, part of the background, as inevitable as vultures in the sky or termites in the soil. By the time the light begins to fade, your group has circled back toward a familiar cluster of trees. The canids vanish into the grass, as though swallowed by it, leaving nothing but the memory of movement. You settle onto the ground, chewing a strip of fibrous root, and wonder if tomorrow you'll see them again. Or if, in this world, again is a luxury no one should expect. The day breaks with a thin mist clinging to the ground, beads of dew shimmering on spiderwebs stretched between stalks of grass. Your breath clouds faintly in the cool air, a fleeting reminder that not every morning here begins with heat pressing down on you. The group stirs slowly, shoulders rising and falling, heads turning toward the east, where pale light spills over the horizon. Somewhere beyond that glow, the night's predators are slipping into their dens, bellies full, eyes heavy. You rise, scanning the open space ahead. A flicker of movement to your right catches your eye. It's familiar now. One of the wild canids, the same long-legged silhouette from yesterday, stands just beyond a fallen log, ears swiveling in your direction. This time, it doesn't move away. Instead, it seems to study you, nose lifted, as if weighing whether your group is worth shadowing again. The morning hunt, or, more often for you, the morning search for leftovers, begins. You set out toward a cluster of thorn trees where birds chatter noisily overhead. There's a rhythm to your movement. Pause, listen, glance behind, then step forward. The canid slips into the pattern too, pacing parallel to you, using the same pauses, the same scanning motions. Historians still argue whether these moments mark the beginning of cooperation or were simply mutual exploitation. Two species using the other as moving cover and an extra set of eyes. But whatever it is, it's working today. The first benefit comes sooner than expected. While your group focuses on a patch of berry shrubs, the canid stops dead, head snapping toward a thicket to the north. You freeze, following its gaze. A faint rustle, too heavy for the wind, too rhythmic for small prey, slides through the air. You can't see it yet, but your skin prickles. Slowly, you shift your stance, positioning yourself so you're between the noise and the group's younger members. Moments later, the shape emerges, a spotted hyena, head low, moving with the casual menace of something that doesn't fear much. It pauses when it spots you, nostrils flaring, and then veers away, uninterested in a confrontation. without clear reward. The canid watches it go, then glances back at you as if to say, "See, I noticed first." It's not friendship, not yet, but the awareness is mutual. You start to notice how often the canid alerts before you do. Sometimes it's a tilt of the head, other times a sudden stillness, and once a low growl. You feel more in your chest than hear with your ears. By midday, the air has warmed, the ground beneath your feet radiating heat in faint waves. The group rests under scattered shade while the canid lingers at the edge, panting lightly, eyes half closed but still watchful. It doesn't join you, doesn't share food, but its presence shifts the energy around you. Even the smallest sound, a grasshopper landing nearby, pulls its attention. A quirky thought comes to you. Maybe you're just another herd animal in its eyes, like the zebra or wildebeest it sometimes trails. Herds have safety in numbers. Maybe your kind offers the same, in a different way. And maybe you think of it the same way. Another set of ears, another warning signal in a land where being caught unaware can be fatal. Later in the day, a commotion draws you both toward the riverbank. A crocodile has taken something large, too far gone to tell what it was, and the churning water has drawn a crowd. Birds shriek from the air, fish scatter in silver flashes, and the smell of fresh blood drifts downstream. You don't go too close. Neither does the canid. Instead, you both stand at a safe distance, observing the chaos like two spectators at an event you wouldn't dare participate in. On the walk back toward familiar ground, the space between you shrinks. The canid walks maybe 10 paces away now, no longer darting behind cover. It still keeps its head angled toward you, but its steps are easy, unhurried. There's no flash of teeth, no sign of tension, just parallel paths. As the sun sinks low and the grass turns gold, you settle into a shallow depression in the earth. The canid stops just uphill, lying down with its chin on its paws, ears still turning like little radar dishes. You both watch the horizon until the shadows deepen enough to swallow the shapes of trees and stones. Somewhere in the dark, something moves. But for the moment, the night feels just a little less threatening. Morning arrives again with a soft haze, and for a few fleeting moments, the world feels almost gentle. The grass shimmers, dew clinging to every blade, and the scent of earth mixed with sun-warmed leaves fills your nostrils. You rise slowly, aware that this day will demand the same vigilance as the last, but with a curious sense that something is different. Maybe it's you noticing the patterns of life around you, or maybe it's the wild canid, now an almost constant presence on the edge of your awareness. Your group moves together, foraging as usual. Roots are dug up, berries plucked, and insects wriggling in your fingers provide protein you'd never appreciate in a modern kitchen. A particularly sticky patch of sap catches your attention, and you taste it cautiously. Bitter, slightly sweet, and full of the subtle aroma of resin. You swallow a small amount, and it reminds you, food here is always a gamble. Some pleasant, some less so. Historians still argue whether Australopithecus had a real understanding of safe versus dangerous plants, or if trial and error simply honed survival instincts over generations. The canid trails just a little closer than yesterday, moving with that same careful gait, ears flicking at every sound. It pauses beside a termite mound, sniffs, then shifts its weight almost impatiently. You begin to notice that it seems to anticipate your movements. When you step aside to avoid thorny brush, it pauses, letting you pass first, then continues along your old trail. Whether coincidence or recognition, it feels like a tiny handshake between species. By midday, the air presses down, heavy with heat. Your stomach rumbles in protest, reminding you that while water and shade are abundant, calories are still precious. You find a small grove of acacias and drop down, grabbing the nearest roots. The canid sits a short distance away, watching with quiet intent, neither approaching nor retreating. You chew thoughtfully, considering the curious balance forming between you. Later, you stumble upon a small carcass, nothing fresh, just the remnants of a scavenged antelope. The canid approaches cautiously, and for the first time, doesn't run when you step closer. You kneel, breaking off a small strip of sinew for yourself. Then notice the canid nudge a piece of bone with its nose. It's tentative, careful, and strangely deliberate. Over countless generations, these small moments, mutual tolerance, shared spaces, awareness of each other, will lay the groundwork for the slow, intricate process we call domestication. Evening comes. The sun dips low, painting the sky in shades of orange and lavender. Your group settles under the sparse shade of a tree, fatigue pressing into your muscles. The canid curls near the edge of your camp, ears twitching but body relaxed. It's not a pet, not a friend, not even fully an ally, but it's there, in that liminal space between stranger and companion. And in these small, repeated interactions, the seeds of something extraordinary are planted. Over the following hours, as the heat of the day fades into the cool whisper of night, you watch shadows lengthen, wind carrying the distant calls of nocturnal hunters. Your body relaxes, the tension of constant vigilance easing just enough to allow reflection. It's here, in these quiet moments, that the first threads of trust, of shared existence, begin to weave between human and canid. You lie down, feeling the hard earth beneath you, and for the first time in generations, there's a faint sense of calm that didn't exist before, an unspoken acknowledgement that survival can sometimes be shared. The night deepens, and the world slows its pace. The wind whispers softly through the tall grass, carrying the faint rustle of distant creatures, the rhythm of life continuing even as your eyelids grow heavy. You feel the hard earth beneath you, grounding and steady, and the memory of the sun, the wind, the dust, and the sparse shade lingers in your body like a gentle hum. The canid rests nearby, silent but present, a reminder that connection, even in its earliest and most tentative form, can exist in the quiet of ordinary moments. The air cools further, carrying the earthy scent of night. Somewhere a bird calls, a soft note that seems almost like a lullaby. You feel the steady pulse of life around you, the movements of the grass, the shift of distant shadows, the slow, patient breathing of your companions. Everything is here, yet nothing demands more than your calm attention. The world is alive, yet gentle now, unfolding around you with a softness that is rare in the harshness of day. In these moments, the challenges of survival fade into background hum. Hunger, danger, thirst, they do not vanish, but they pause, allowing a different rhythm to take hold. You can almost feel the passage of millions of years in the quiet, the slow shaping of instincts, behaviors, and bonds that will one day define both your species and the canids you share the land with. Even as sleep tugs at your consciousness, there is reassurance in the continuity, the slow unfolding of life that continues night after night. As your body relaxes and the heartbeat of the savanna becomes a gentle drum, allow your mind to drift through the grass, along the paths of those early humans, beside the cautious canids who shadowed them. Let the world of 4.7 million years ago ease around you, soft and expansive, a cradle of life and beginnings. Slowly, you sink deeper into rest, knowing that even the faintest threads of connection can ripple across time, shaping futures in ways unseen. Now, let your thoughts quiet, your breath lengthen, and your eyelids close gently. You squint toward the horizon where the light plays tricks, making water appear where there's only more grass. The wind presses hot air against your skin, bringing the rustle of unseen creatures. Your feet press into cracked earth, still cool in shadowed spots, but already heating up under the day's glare. Somewhere behind you, a rustle too heavy for wind, reminding you you're not alone out here. The world is loud and quiet at the same time. Cicadas drone, birds call out in alarm, and something large splashes in a muddy pool far off. The mainstream scientific consensus says that around this time, about 4.7 million years ago, early hominins were shifting from dense forests into these open grasslands, forced by changing climate to adapt to a place where you can see danger coming. And it can see you too. You're taller now than your tree-bound ancestors, and your legs carry you farther between scarce water holes. But the savanna doesn't care how upright you are. The predators here are specialists. Saber-toothed cats that can leap from a crouch in the tall grass, giant hyenas with bone-crushing jaws, and crocodiles lurking in shrinking rivers, perfectly willing to make you their afternoon snack. You pause at a low acacia, its thorny branches like nature's barbed wire. The shade is thin, the air still, but it's a pause. You pluck a few pods, not exactly gourmet dining, and crack them open. They're bitter, dry, but they fill the hollow in your stomach just enough to keep moving. The fringe theory some anthropologists toy with says our craving for bitter greens traces back to these days, when a little plant toxicity was a small price to pay for calories. Whether or not that's true, you chew anyway. A few meters away, a small troop of others moves parallel to you. They're not your family exactly, but they're not strangers either. That's the strange middle ground here. You're not yet social in the way humans will be later, but you keep an eye on each other. When one stops suddenly and tilts their head, you feel the shift ripple through your spine. You freeze too, scanning the grass. Historians still argue whether early cooperation in this era was intentional or just incidental, whether you worked together because you meant to, or because the same survival logic kept you in loose clusters. Either way, you're aware of them, and they're aware of you. That awareness might be the thin thread keeping you alive. The heat presses harder now, and your mind drifts toward water. You know a shallow pool exists beyond that ridge, but reaching it is a gamble. Everything needs water here, and everything includes teeth and claws. Your feet sink slightly into a patch of damp soil as you crest the ridge, and there it is, a muddy, trampled circle ringed with hoofprints and claw marks. You watch for movement, for the flick of an ear, or the gleam of an eye, and only step forward when the stillness feels safe. You drink quickly, not too close to the edge, and never losing sight of the tall grass. The water tastes faintly of mud and algae, but it's cold, and that's enough. Nearby, one of the others crouches, scooping water into their palms, glancing at you just long enough to acknowledge you exist. That flicker of connection is wordless but real. Proof that on this ancient plain, even a glance can be a form of survival. The day stretches on, heat unrelenting. You shift from shade to shade, scanning for edible shoots or unlucky lizards too slow to escape. Each step feels calculated. Is this patch of grass too tall? That rustle, wind or predator? You test the air with every breath, hoping the scent of danger arrives before the danger itself. Somewhere far behind, vultures trace slow circles in the sky, reminders of what happens when you make the wrong call. By late afternoon, the shadows stretch longer and the light turns amber. It's not cooler yet, but the worst is over for now. You start angling back toward a place you've sheltered before, a hollow between rocks, hidden enough to feel like yours, though it probably isn't. The walk back is quieter. The cicadas have given way to low evening calls from unseen creatures. When you reach the rocks, there's no sign of large predators, just the faint musk of previous occupants. You settle in, curling knees toward chest, listening as the savanna changes guard. Soon the night will bring its own challenges, but for the moment, you've made it through another day. Your mind lingers on the fact that you're here at all, that somehow you and a few others threaded your way through the noise, heat, and hunger of this place. Survival feels less like a victory and more like a truce with the land. And tomorrow, the game begins again. The night arrives slowly, dragging its shadows across the savanna like wet cloth. You trudge to a familiar hollow beneath a cluster of rocks, the smell of dust and dry grass mixing with something slightly tangy, maybe the remnants of yesterday's rain or the spoor of passing animals. Stars prick the sky one by one, sharp points of cold light that seem impossibly far away. The wind softens, carrying whispers from tall grasses that bend and sway with a life of their own. You probably won't survive a single misstep here, but tonight, you rest. Your hands brush over smooth stones and dry sticks. Somewhere nearby, another figure, the same one you noticed earlier, cradles a tiny flame between two stones. Sparks jump, dancing briefly before fading. That simple flicker of light feels monumental. Historians still argue whether our ancestors could create fire at this stage, or if they merely scavenged natural flames, like lightning strikes. Either way, seeing fire glimmer against the dark makes the night feel less like a threat and more like a companion. You crouch close, careful not to smother it, and feel warmth creep over your fingers. You notice the scent of smoke, acrid and earthy, and a memory of roasted roots drifts through your mind. They taste different than raw ones, softer, sweeter, almost like a hidden gift from the earth itself. Fringe studies suggest early humans might have even experimented with overcooked or slightly charred foods, learning flavors through trial and error. You chuckle quietly, imagining someone deliberately burning dinner just to see what happens. Around you, the others huddle in similar shadows. No words are exchanged, just glances and gestures that mean more than sound. One lifts a hand toward a rustling bush, a warning, a signal that movement is close. You freeze. The brush trembles, then a small, harmless creature scuttles into the dark. Relief washes through you, and a faint grin touches your lips. Even the smallest signals can save a life here. The night stretches, and you notice patterns. The wind changes, scents shift, and distant calls of unknown animals mark the hours. You pass a root, sniff it, and chew. Not all bites are pleasant, but each teaches you something about the land, its gifts, and its dangers. Scholars still debate how much early humans communicated complex knowledge at this stage versus relying on instinct and observation alone. You decide it doesn't matter. Survival depends on noticing, remembering, and subtly sharing what you learn. Soon, a small game of flickers and shadows begins. You spot movement near a pool, a reflection of moonlight on water. Another crouches beside you, nodding toward the same motion. You exchange no words, but a plan forms anyway. Approach cautiously, wait, and maybe, just maybe, snare a small meal. Cooperation is emerging here, soft and tentative, born not from language, but from shared need. The hours pass. Your group's silent coordination is unspoken, intuitive. Someone shifts closer to the fire, stretching, hands near the warmth. Another tosses a stone into the shadows, testing depth and distance. You follow suit, a quiet game of attention and timing. By the time the moon climbs high, the hollow feels alive, not with chatter, but with understanding. Even in darkness, there is learning. You notice who reacts fastest to scent, who crouches lowest when danger appears, who stays calm when the wind carries the stench of predators. Each tiny observation is a thread in a growing web of cooperation. You realize the night itself becomes a teacher, forcing lessons in patience, trust, and risk. As dawn edges closer, the horizon glows faintly with amber. You feel the first chill of morning and the pull of waking muscles. The world is quieter now, the animals of night retreating, leaving only the scent of earth, smoke, and shared effort. You lie back on dry grass, feeling the subtle hum of survival vibrating through the group. It's not a victory, not yet, but it's proof. Small signals, tiny gestures, and shared attentiveness can make the difference between life and oblivion. You close your eyes briefly, feeling warmth from fire, companionship, and the unspoken understanding that tonight you survived together. The sun creeps up over the horizon, spilling gold across the tall grasses and waking the world with slow, deliberate warmth. You rise, muscles stiff from sleeping on uneven ground, and stretch against the crisp air. Dew clings to your skin in tiny, cold beads, and the scent of wet earth mixes with the lingering smoke of last night's fire. You probably won't survive a single stumble, but the day ahead is full of opportunity and risk. You scan the horizon, Shadows shift as early risers, both human and animal, begin their cautious routines. Herds of strange, long-necked creatures graze carefully, ears flicking at the slightest sound. And somewhere in the distance, a saber-tooth slinks along the tree line, invisible except for the ripple of its movement. Your pulse quickens. Today, as with every day, your survival depends on coordination, awareness, and instinct sharpened by countless small decisions. You glance toward your companions, noticing how each is already assuming a role without discussion. One carries sticks for fire, another checks shallow pools for water, while a third crouches low, scanning for prey. Risk and reward mingle in the air. Historians still argue whether coordinated hunting in this era was an accidental alignment of action or the beginnings of intentional strategy. Either way, you feel the hum of shared purpose tighten the group, a fragile but potent bond. Near a thicket, you spot movement, a cluster of small, wolf-like shadows. Your stomach twists with recognition. They watch you curiously, tilting heads, cautious but undeniably interested. Fringe studies suggest that early humans may have begun a subtle dance of observation and mutual tolerance with proto-dogs far earlier than traditionally thought, each learning the other's rhythms. You freeze, heart hammering, watching the creatures inch closer, drawn by the scent of your presence and, perhaps, the warmth of your small fire. The hunt begins. You approach a group of grazing animals, careful not to startle them. Your companions fan out, creating silent pressure, corralling prey toward an opening you've identified. Tiny signals, hand gestures, shifts of weight, barely audible clicks guide your actions. You realize that shared risk amplifies success. Alone, you could fail, but together, each of you is an extension of the others. Somewhere behind you, a proto-dog steps softly, tail low, following without fear. You notice it tilts its head at your movements, mimicking the subtle crouch you make before a dash. You catch yourself smiling. Even now, survival feels slightly lighter with this shadowy partner. Historians still debate whether these early canids were opportunistic scavengers or intentional participants in hunts. Either possibility fascinates you. Maybe cooperation isn't uniquely human after all. The moment stretches. You launch forward with practiced caution, a leap here, a nudge there, and suddenly the prey is moving as intended. The proto-dog mirrors your movements, cutting off escape routes instinctively. You marvel at this synchronicity, barely breathing, entirely focused. By the time the small herd is trapped in the shallow clearing, you feel the thrill of near success, tempered by exhaustion. The aftermath is messy but necessary. You divide what you can, sharing both spoils and survival tips. The proto-dog licks at scraps, eyes bright, as if acknowledging the mutual benefit of cooperation. The lesson is simple but profound. Coordination, even tentative and imperfect, increases odds of living another day. Fringe anthropologists whisper that early alliances with canids may have shaped not just hunting, but social structures and emotional intelligence. You don't need convincing. Tonight's hunt says it all. By mid-afternoon, shadows lengthen and muscles ache. You sit under the same acacia, chewing a tough root, smiling faintly at the distant flick of proto-dog ears. There's an unspoken understanding here. Danger is constant, but so is the quiet thrill of shared effort. You feel the tentative threads of trust stretching across your group and into the small wild companion at your side. In this ancient world, cooperation is no longer accidental. It is survival. The day wanes, and as the savannah bathes in amber, you notice that something intangible has shifted. Patterns emerge, gestures become meaningful, glances carry information. Risk, trust, and coordination are no longer separate. They are entwined. The sun dips lower, and you settle near water, heart still racing, but mind at peace. Tonight, like last night, you will rest together, and the lessons of the hunt will linger, like the smoky scent of fire on your hands. The evening drapes itself across the savannah like a slow amber tide. You trudge back toward the hollow between rocks where you've sought refuge before, muscles humming with fatigue from the day's coordinated hunts. The air has cooled just enough for sweat to dry into a tight, itchy film on your skin. You probably won't survive a single misstep if you ignore the subtle warnings around you. But you carry forward, eyes flicking to movement in the grass, ears straining for a whisper of danger. By the time you reach the hollow, shadows have lengthened, softening the landscape into pools of dark and muted gold. You notice the others already there, crouched low, watching the horizon. Without words, each acknowledges the return of the group, a quiet symphony of gestures that communicates safety, presence, and shared experience. Even without speech, there is a rhythm forming, a pattern of trust and expectation. Historians still debate when human cooperation became fully intentional rather than incidental. But the signals you exchange tonight feel undeniably deliberate. A small fire sparks to life between two smooth stones, casting trembling light on faces and shadows. You instinctively pull a few sticks from nearby brush, feeding the flame just enough to keep it steady. The smell of burning grass and dry wood fills your nose, familiar and comforting, a fragile barrier against the encroaching darkness. Fringe research suggests early humans may have experimented with fire for warmth and cooking far earlier than conventional timelines indicate, perhaps as a subtle way to draw small animals or proto-dogs closer. Curiosity leading to cooperation. You glance toward the edge of the firelight and catch a flicker of movement, the familiar shape of a proto-dog, tail low but eyes alert, inching nearer. As night deepens, the group settles into quiet routines. Someone sharpens a stone tool, the metallic scrape a soft percussion against the rhythm of the savannah. Others forage for roots, chewing slowly, tasting texture, and learning which plants are edible and which merely decorative. You pass a glance toward the proto-dog, which mirrors your stillness, its presence a silent acknowledgement that cooperation extends beyond your own species. You realize that this fragile companionship is teaching lessons in observation, patience, and unspoken communication. The conversation here is in gestures, in the placement of bodies and the alignment of movements. A glance warns of shifting shadows. A subtle shift of weight signals a predator's approach. Each member of your group contributes without words, their actions a testament to the slow evolution of shared understanding. Tonight, risk and trust are inseparable, interwoven with the quiet magic of collective survival. You lean back against a rock, watching sparks float upward and fade into the night. Your companions, including the proto-dog, settle close, forming a protective circle that is as much about warmth and comfort as it is about vigilance. You notice small patterns. Who tends to stay near the fire? Who curls at the edge of shadow? Who lifts an ear at the slightest rustle? These observations build a mental map of risk and reliability, an early blueprint for cooperation. Hours stretch. The fire burns low. The wind carries distant animal calls, and the world feels both immense and intimate. Your eyes grow heavy, and you feel the gentle pulse of survival, the shared rhythm that binds the group. Lessons from today, subtle signals, risk managed collectively, trust extended to both human and proto-dog, have settled deep into your awareness. The quiet understanding is clear. Cooperation, once tentative and fragile, is now a lifeline. In this hollow, under the gaze of countless stars, you drift toward sleep, comforted by warmth, presence, and the unspoken knowledge that together you have carved a small, defensible space against the chaos of the wild. Tonight, the lessons of shared effort, trust, and attentive awareness linger as gently as the smoke rising from the last embers of your fire. The night is long and soft now, the sounds of distant animals fading, and your mind unwinds in slow, soothing arcs. Each breath you take carries the faint tang of smoke, earth, and the quiet assurance that you are not alone. And somewhere nearby, a proto-dog shifts, ears twitching, sharing in the silent watchfulness that has become your rhythm. Together, you let the savanna cradle you. Danger has not vanished, but for these hours, the lesson is simple. Cooperation, even at its most nascent, is a bridge to survival, a warm thread linking every heartbeat, glance, and gesture into a shared story that will stretch across generations. The fire dwindles to glowing coals, casting a gentle, amber wash across the hollow. You breathe slowly, each inhalation carrying the faint aroma of charred wood, earth, and the dry grasses that surround you. The world outside has softened. Shadows merge into one another, distant rustles and calls of nocturnal creatures forming a lullaby you barely notice, but that steadies your mind and heart. You feel the warmth of companions, human and proto-dog alike, nestled close, their steady presence like a quiet pulse beneath the vast expanse of the star-strewn sky. You reflect on the day, on the hunts and subtle signals, the risks measured and the tiny successes shared. The patterns, gestures, and shared attention have woven an invisible web of trust. Even in this raw, untamed world, you realize that understanding another's movements, reading a glance or a tilt of the head, and offering patience in turn are gifts more vital than any food or shelter. These are the first threads of cooperation, delicate yet enduring, and they cradle your imagination as effectively as the hollow cradles your body. The night wind whispers through the tall grasses, carrying the cool scent of distant water and the faint musk of unseen animals. Your eyelids grow heavy, muscles release tension, and the pulse of your companions blends with the rhythm of the savanna. Each sound, each breath, each shift of presence is a reminder that you are part of something larger than yourself, a tentative but resilient network of life, instinct, and mutual reliance. You feel the slow drift of sleep approaching, warm and steady. The proto-dog shifts slightly, a soft reminder that cooperation transcends language, bridging instinct and intention. As your consciousness thins, you carry with you the memory of shared survival, quiet signals, and the comfort of presence, knowing that even in a world so ancient and raw, connection offers safety, meaning, and gentle guidance toward rest. And with that, you exhale, letting the savannah's vast, murmuring night cradle you into sleep, letting cooperation and care become a soft, protective rhythm around your dreaming mind. The ground under your bare feet is warm, almost hot. It's Africa, somewhere between 1.8 and 2 million years ago, and your ancestors are already restless. They've been in this part of the world for longer than anyone could remember. Not that anyone remembers much beyond the last big hunt, but slowly a pattern has emerged. Dry seasons are lasting longer. Herds you used to follow are moving farther north. The air smells dustier, and the streams you knew are turning to cracked mud before the rains return. You and your people don't think of it as climate change, but you feel it in every mile you have to walk to find water. Historians still argue whether this restlessness was instinct or necessity. Did early hominins simply wander out of curiosity, or did something, drought, competition, maybe both, push them to leave? What's certain is that Homo erectus, the main character of this particular exodus, had the build and stamina for long journeys. Taller than earlier hominins, with longer legs and a stride made for covering ground, they could follow a herd for days without collapsing. A quirky little fact here: their sweat glands were a secret weapon. While other predators had to rest in the heat of the day, you could keep walking, outlasting almost anything on four legs. The first steps away from Africa weren't glamorous. There was no great leap forward, just gradual drift. Families following game into greener patches. Kids chasing after fruit trees in valleys no one had visited before. You cross dry riverbeds that still smell faintly of hippos. You skirt thorn thickets where leopards watch silently. Sometimes you find nothing. No food, no water. Just wind in your face, and a sun that feels like it's testing you. But then, the land changes. You're moving north, through what would one day be called the Sinai, though you don't have a name for it. Here, the heat doesn't lift at night, and the stars hang low and sharp. Someone in your group has figured out that the brightest one always rises where the morning light will come. You don't have the word navigation, but you're already doing it. A mainstream fact most archaeologists agree on. Footprints found at a site called Ileret in Kenya, belonging to Homo erectus, show the same arched feet and forward-pointing toes you have now. These weren't clumsy, ape-like steps. They were the steps of a traveler. You carry that same posture into lands where the soil changes color under your feet. Black volcanic ash, pale dunes, and finally, the dusty yellow plains beyond the narrow land bridge that connects Africa to the rest of the world. Crossing into these new territories, you don't know you've left your birthplace forever. There's just a different smell in the air, saltier, heavier, maybe from the distant Mediterranean. The plants are stranger. The animals are too. Giant hyenas, wild horses, even camels that look slightly baffled by your presence. And the people, if you meet any, don't look much different from you, though their scents are unfamiliar, and they carry tools shaped a little differently. One night, after a long march, you camp near a low cliff. The wind rushes over it, sounding like a whisper you almost understand. Someone drops a smooth stone into your hand, a piece of flint, sharper than anything you've used before. You don't know it yet, but this small exchange will echo for millennia, part of the slow spread of knowledge along these wandering paths. You keep moving, always moving. Sometimes the land pushes you onward with hunger. Sometimes it draws you forward with the sight of green hills or the promise of running water. And though you never speak of migration or expansion, every step you take redraws the living map of the world. The morning light strikes your face like a soft warning as you trudge over a sandy ridge. You're leaving familiar plains behind, heading into lands that rise and fall unpredictably. Mountains, rocky outcrops, deserts where the sun bakes the ground so hard your bare feet ache with every step. Your group pauses at the edge of a dry riverbed, peering down at a line of distant trees, the only hint that water might still exist in this desolate stretch. You sense tension, because your survival now depends on reading the land better than the land reads you. Crossing harsh frontiers isn't just physical, it's mental. You've learned to anticipate the moods of rivers, the temper of the wind, and the behaviors of prey that vanish too quickly into the horizon. One day, you spot a mirage shimmering, a pool that isn't there, teasing your thirsty mind. You laugh quietly at your own desperation, reminding yourself that even 1.8 million years ago, humans were capable of the same small follies that still amuse people today. Historians still argue whether Homo erectus followed predetermined routes or simply drifted opportunistically, wandering wherever the herds and rainfall led them. What's clear is that survival required ingenuity. You discover that mud from the riverbank can seal cracks in a broken container, and that certain berries, bitter at first bite, are safe to eat when roasted in embers. Quirky, almost fringe evidence suggests some groups even carried small decorative stones, tokens maybe, or perhaps lucky charms, to mark safe resting spots or to comfort themselves in the vast emptiness. You smile at the idea of your distant ancestor pocketing a tiny rock and thinking, "This will keep the spirits off our backs tonight." The terrain grows more extreme. Cliffs rise, sand dunes shift, and river crossings become mini odysseys. Some nights, you sleep on jagged rock, your back aching, your stomach still growling. Yet the body is remarkable. Your legs ache, but you adapt, stretching, rolling, and walking in ways that feel almost meditative. That same adaptation allowed early humans to cross deserts where other creatures couldn't survive. A fact that the archaeological record confirms through wear patterns in bones and fossilized footprints. At one point, you stumble across an ancient salt flat, gleaming white in the sun like a frozen lake of sugar. Salt, so mundane to you now, was once a precious survival tool. It preserves food, balances hydration, and even served as a trade commodity among wandering bands. You pinch a small crystal between your fingers, marveling at its simple necessity, and perhaps, in a very human way, at its beauty. You push onward into narrow valleys where the air grows cooler but less forgiving. Winds whip between mountain ridges, carrying the scent of predators you can't yet see. One evening, a large shadow moves across the ridge. A leopard? A lion? Your pulse quickens, but you remind yourself to breathe. Survival here is often about calm observation rather than reckless confrontation. And the fringe side of this story? Archaeologists have found traces suggesting early humans might have made use of natural bridges, fallen trees, rock arches, to bypass the toughest sections of terrain. It's speculative, but imagine balancing across a log over a rushing creek 2 million years ago. Your life in that precise step. The thrill, the risk, the absurdity, all part of the same migratory rhythm. By the time you reach a plateau above a wide valley, the land softens just enough to offer game, berries, and water. The view stretches endlessly, and your group pauses, feeling that rare mixture of exhaustion and awe. Even here, you are reminded that the journey is only halfway done. You carry not just food in your stomach, but the lessons of the land in your bones. How to read signs, how to move silently, how to find rhythm in chaos. Your fingers trace the edges of a smooth stone you picked up earlier, an echo of those first wandering steps from Africa. These harsh frontiers, the deserts and cliffs, all shaped you into a creature that could survive what others could not. And tomorrow, when you continue, the land ahead will demand more than stamina. It will demand cleverness, cooperation, and a kind of audacious courage that your ancestors may not have named, but practiced every single day. The sun hovers low, spilling pale gold over the ridges as you trudge along the edge of what will one day be recognized as an ancient coastline. Water glimmers far below, a ribbon of blue that seems both inviting and impossible. You've learned that early hominins sometimes ventured near seas and lakes, testing waters that would eventually define trade routes, settlements, and survival. Today, you wonder if your own group is the first to sense that crossing might be possible, even with no boat, no map, and only the instinct to keep moving. You pause to observe a stretch of tide-washed sand. Tiny shells crunch beneath your fingers. Quirky evidence. Some archaeologists suggest early humans may have carried mollusks as a protein source, or perhaps even for decoration. You chuckle at the image. Homo erectus threading shells into necklaces, while also trying not to be dinner for a crocodile lurking nearby. Historians still argue whether coastal wandering was a planned strategy or a lucky byproduct of inland migration. Either way, you feel the pull of water, a new frontier calling, hinting at a different rhythm of life. The Ice Age looms in the distance, glaciers slowly pressing into your path from the north. You feel the first chill in your bones, a reminder that adaptability isn't optional here. Your group experiments with makeshift clothing, furs draped unevenly over shoulders, and fire in small hollows for warmth. You notice subtle changes, patterns of footprints near the water, clever stacking of stones to form temporary barriers, even evidence of basic shelters that shield from wind and snow. Survival has become an art form. You approach a narrow stretch where land meets water. The gap isn't wide, but it's enough to make you pause. Early humans may have used rafts of reeds or simple log constructions to test crossings. Imagine balancing on a clumsy float, the current tugging insistently, the weight of your life in each cautious step. The audacity and ingenuity required here are immense. Yet it's these experiments that eventually open islands to human presence, shaping migration in ways that ripple for tens of thousands of years. Food is sparse, yet life persists. Fish hide in shallow pools, seabirds circle overhead, and shellfish cling stubbornly to rocks. You remember that crocodile dung sunscreen we laughed about back on the plains? Well, along the coast, you find other odd adaptations, like storing mollusks in sand to keep them fresh. A small but ingenious trick. Quirky habits such as these may seem trivial, but they underpin a vast survival strategy, one that combines observation, patience, and occasional leaps of faith. By nightfall, you reach the base of a glacier-fed valley. Cold, wind, and ice challenge every step. You huddle around small fires, sharing warmth and perhaps unspoken stories of past dangers and close calls. Some of your group experiment with ways to cut through frozen streams, using sharpened stones to chip ice, creating drinking water. Others focus on the softer edges of the land, probing for edible roots or tubers, anything that can sustain energy for the journey ahead. Glacial landscapes are silent, but they speak if you listen. The creak of ice, the distant crash of snow, and the whisper of wind between mountains are lessons in caution and patience. Early humans in these territories weren't just wandering, they were learning a new language of land, water, and survival. Every misstep is a teacher, every clever adaptation a small victory. And though the cold bites, the body adapts, heart steady in the rhythm of the wandering path. Finally, as night swallows the valley, you reflect on the ingenuity that has carried you here, the careful observation, the cooperation of the group, the fearless testing of new terrain. From seas to glaciers, your ancestors pushed boundaries not with maps or plans, but with curiosity, courage, and the stubborn insistence to keep moving. And in this moment, you feel connected to the long chain of wandering humans, each step echoing across millennia, hinting at the adventures yet to come. Dawn spreads soft light across the valley, turning ice into a fragile mosaic of blue and white. You trudge along, your breath steaming in the cold air, thinking about how far you've come and how far the human story stretches beyond your eyes. This is the land where different hominin species occasionally intersected, brushing against each other like currents in a wide river, sometimes clashing, sometimes blending. You feel the subtle tension. The landscape is vast, but the spaces where life thrives are limited, and these encounters shape the paths you follow. You come across a narrow ridge where the terrain forces a slow pace. Tracks crisscross in the dust, some from your group, some older, belonging to others you've never met. You study them carefully, noticing differences in stride and foot shape. Maybe Neanderthals passed here, their heavier build leaving deep impressions, their hunting strategies different but effective. Historians still argue whether these species simply tolerated each other or actively exchanged knowledge. Either way, the trails remind you that migration isn't solitary. It's a choreography of overlapping lives, experiences, and survival strategies. Food is scarce, so you rely on shared knowledge. Traps set in hidden gullies, the careful timing of hunting ambushes, and small signs of edible roots poking through frozen soil. Quirky evidence suggests some groups even used rudimentary whistles or calls to coordinate movements, a tiny precursor to language, or at least a clever workaround when silence was dangerous. You can almost hear echoes of laughter as one of your companions fumbles with a stick, startling a rabbit into the snow. Even in survival, there's room for small amusement. The land opens into a rolling plateau. From this vantage, you see distant valleys, streams glinting in the sunlight, and clusters of trees offering shelter. You recall earlier crossings of deserts and glaciers, each boundary tested, each risk measured. And now, in this zone where species intermingle, you carry both the knowledge of past hardships and the cautious curiosity to explore new interactions. Bones and stones scattered around hint at encounters long past. Shared meals, traded tools, and even the faint marks of interbreeding. Whispers of how genetics intertwined across different human branches. One afternoon, you stumble upon a small cave, its walls etched with natural patterns. You imagine Neanderthals or other early humans pausing here, perhaps leaving marks you can't yet decipher. The fringe theory suggests some of these scratches were early attempts at storytelling, a human urge to leave traces, to communicate across time. You trace a finger over a line in the stone, smiling at the thought that, in a way, these marks are a conversation with you. As night falls, the wind softens, and you huddle around small fires, feeling the warmth of community, cooperation, the sharing of food, the guarding of young, the passing of knowledge, has been as crucial as endurance or stamina. You reflect on the intertwining of species, the delicate balance of encounters at these frontier edges, and how even the smallest decisions, choosing to share water, leaving a shell behind, following a herd, ripple forward, shaping survival in ways almost imperceptible. The stars emerge, scattered like crushed gems across the night sky. You imagine countless wanderers before you, gazing at the same constellations, drawing stories, measuring seasons, marking the passage of time. In this space, at the edge of the world as you know it, every step is both ordinary and extraordinary. You breathe in the cold, crisp air, the scent of earth, stone, and faint smoke, and realize that the wandering paths you follow are more than migrations. They are the threads of connection that tie all humans, past and present, together. The mud squelches underfoot as you follow a series of human footprints that wind between enormous mammoth tracks. Some depressions are shallow, where a human had stepped lightly, perhaps scouting. Others are deep, telling the story of someone carrying a heavy load. The tracks are not just incidental. They are part of a map, a guide to survival in a world shared with massive, unpredictable creatures. The air is damp and earthy, tinged with scents of crushed plants and the faint decay of yesterday's rainfall. Every crackle underfoot could alert predators, yet your attention is drawn more to the giant prints, circular, deep, and impossibly large, the rhythm of each step almost hypnotic. Mainstream historians point to fossilized trackways, like those found in White Sands, New Mexico, as proof that humans and Ice Age megafauna shared the same landscapes, sometimes even on the same days. You trace your fingers along a wet depression, marveling at its size compared to your own hand. Beside you, a small human footprint overlaps an older mammoth print, a delicate reminder that early humans were agile, clever, and sometimes bold enough to tread where few would dare. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some anthropologists believe early humans may have intentionally stepped in each other's prints, either for amusement, mimicry, or even ritualistic purposes. You can imagine a child hopping from footprint to footprint, elders shaking their heads, all while laying down traces that will puzzle future researchers. The mud around you also shows the random wallows and rubs of a giant sloth, its marks nearly blending with human movement. Historians still argue whether humans intentionally shadowed these massive creatures to hunt, study, or merely coexist. You watch as the mammoth herd moves ahead, tusks swaying, leaving behind a mosaic of impressions that stretch toward the horizon. You follow, mindful that each footprint carries a story, each step a lesson, and that the ground beneath you is both a playground and a potential trap. The next morning, mist clings to the lowland, curling around the trunks of sparse trees and reeds. The footprints you followed yesterday are softened by dew and rain, some nearly erased, yet enough remains to guide your path. You trudge carefully, sensing the subtle changes in terrain, patches of mud that sag under your weight, dried fissures hinting at yesterday's sun, and shallow puddles reflecting ghostly impressions. Every detail matters when giant beasts and stealthy predators share this land with humans, and you know instinctively that survival depends on noticing the small signs as much as the obvious ones. Ahead, a shadow moves slowly, swaying beneath the fog. Not a mammoth this time, something smaller, nimble, and deliberate. A giant sloth, perhaps, its long claws raking the soil, leaving jagged marks alongside smoother human footprints. You crouch, tracing the edges with your fingers, imagining the creature moving in slow, ponderous rhythm. The tracks tell you where it fed, where it paused, and maybe even where it slept. You note the angles of footprints, the slight variations in depth, and the crushed vegetation nearby. Each of these subtleties is a piece of a puzzle written in mud, a story older than any word you could speak. Mainstream historians cite preserved trackways as evidence of early humans' observational skills, suggesting they not only walked among giant animals, but studied their movements, using the knowledge to hunt, avoid danger, or gather resources. You follow along a series of impressions, noticing overlapping tracks where humans seem to have mirrored the strides of megafauna. Perhaps it was practice, a ritual, or just an attempt to navigate efficiently. The thought amuses you. A prehistoric ancestor tiptoeing like a mammoth, careful not to spook the beasts while plotting the next move. Here's a quirky detail. Some fringe theories propose early humans may have intentionally mimicked animal tracks to mislead predators or rival groups, a sort of prehistoric prank. You can picture it, someone grinning in the mud, leaving prints that make the predator pause or confuse its instincts. It's clever, audacious, and borderline ridiculous. But in the world you're walking through, audacity is a survival tool. You notice a subtle change in the footprints. Human prints veer, seemingly urgent, while adjacent mammoth tracks widen and deepen. You glance around, sensing tension in the land. Dire wolves or saber-toothed cats may be nearby, invisible yet indicated by tiny disturbances. A flattened patch of grass, a broken twig, a faint scent carried by the wind. Historians still argue whether early humans followed predators deliberately for scavenging opportunities or avoided them entirely. Today, as you trace both human and animal prints, you feel the uneasy balance firsthand. Curiosity, tinged with caution. Hours pass in quiet observation. Streams intersect the tracks, and the mud becomes slick and treacherous, forcing detours and careful steps. The landscape is alive with textures. The rough bark of a tree marked by a sloth's claws, the soft depressions left by smaller animals, and the human prints bending around obstacles with elegant efficiency. Birds chirp overhead, undisturbed by your presence, and the distant rumble of mammoth movements underscores the majesty of this prehistoric world. By late afternoon, you come across a complex convergence. Mammoth tracks, giant sloth marks, human prints, and faint paw impressions from predators all weaving together. You crouch, fingers tracing the mud, marveling at the intricacy. This was no random chaos. It was a living map of coexistence, survival, and observation. Early humans were learning from giants, predators, and the land itself, adapting strategies with every step. Following their footprints is like reading a textbook written in earth and instinct, a curriculum older than civilization. The air grows colder as you move into a narrow valley where sunlight barely reaches the ground, filtered through low-hanging branches and tall grasses slick with dew. You step carefully, aware that predators patrol these areas: saber-toothed cats, dire wolves, and even shadowy cave lions. Their presence is suggested by broken twigs, depressions in moss, and faint paw prints, each almost imperceptible unless you focus. You tread softly, following human and giant tracks while scanning for every subtle clue. Every step is a negotiation between curiosity and caution. Ahead, a set of human footprints snakes through a thicket, the stride long and hurried, almost panicked. Adjacent are paw prints, round, heavy, close behind. You pause. Are the humans fleeing, or are they deliberately shadowing a predator for advantage? Historians still argue whether early humans actively followed predators to scavenge or observe them from a safe distance. Right now, in this misty valley, your instincts tell you to keep distance, to learn from the prints without becoming part of the story. A quirky idea floats through your mind. Some researchers suggest humans use their own footsteps to mask noise, deliberately stomping to confuse predators. You chuckle at the mental image, stomping like a mammoth to outwit a dire wolf. But it seems plausible in a world where survival depended on ingenuity. You crouch near a shallow depression, tracing faint claw marks. Dire wolves move in pairs, their coordination evident even in the muddy impressions left behind. Following them directly would be reckless. Indirectly, it offers lessons in tracking, timing, and patience. The human prints here are deliberate, careful, almost ritualistic. Toes splayed, heels lifted lightly. Perhaps the hunter is mimicking animal movements, taking cues from predator strategies observed over years. Mainstream historians see this as evidence of humans' exceptional observational skills and adaptive intelligence, learning from both the environment and its most dangerous inhabitants. You imagine someone in your group, crouched in mud, analyzing a predator's stride, imagining the patterns of life and death unfolding in front of them. Hours pass as you navigate shallow streams, slick mud, and dense undergrowth. You follow prints that loop, intersect, and twist unpredictably. The landscape teaches patience. The impressions left by humans, mammoths, and predators are instructions written in mud, each subtle shift a lesson in survival. You notice the faint residue of vegetation in some prints, crushed and imprinted, an unintentional record of movement and diet, of life happening alongside yours in a delicate balance. The sun dips low, casting long shadows across tracks that wind and twist like a labyrinth. You observe how mammoth tracks widen, deepening as the herd moves with purpose, and how human prints follow, bending gently to avoid obstacles. You realize that these footprints are not just traces. They are an evolving narrative of coexistence, strategy, and adaptation. Some may have been left deliberately to mislead predators. Others record movement, observation, or even play. A fringe theory whispers through your mind. Early humans may have deliberately followed predator tracks to locate carcasses or map their movements. You can picture a cautious, clever ancestor stepping lightly, eyes sharp, imitating animal instincts while retaining human ingenuity. Every print becomes a dialogue, a silent exchange between species, each teaching the next generation how to survive in a harsh, dynamic world. The valley seems alive with memory, every depression and ridge a chapter in a story older than language itself. Rain begins again as you trudge across a low plain, the mist now heavier, clinging to your hair and clothes. The prints you've followed for days are softened, edges rounded, some partially filled with water, almost vanishing. You step carefully, noting where human toes press deeper, where mammoth heels sink more than usual, and where claws from predators left shallow depressions. Every impression is a lesson in adaptation, a record of choices and consequences, now fleeting under nature's quiet reclamation. You feel the strange combination of awe and anxiety, knowing that these tracks, once solid evidence of life, are dissolving beneath your very feet. You notice human footprints carrying hints of weight, perhaps tools, food, or supplies. Nearby, mammoth tracks shift in direction, indicating herd movement and feeding patterns. Your group follows at a respectful distance, observing without disturbing. Mainstream historians often highlight such preserved trackways as proof that humans and megafauna shared resources and landscapes, sometimes collaborating with environment cues, sometimes simply surviving alongside each other. It's humbling to consider the coordination and awareness required to walk this land successfully, to read the stories left in mud, and to anticipate unseen dangers. A quirky detail comes to mind. Some anthropologists speculate early humans may have walked deliberately through giant animal prints, perhaps as ritual, practice, or even to confuse predators. You smile at the thought, imagining an ancestor hopping into the depression of a mammoth's footprint, grinning to themselves, blending cleverness with playfulness. It's strange, audacious, and a little absurd, but that audacity was essential to survival. Historians still argue whether these movements were calculated for hunting, scavenging, or simple navigation. Right now, watching the soft mud swallow the tracks, it feels like the answer is a little of everything. You step over puddles, tracing the faint overlapping lines of humans, mammoths, and predators. Each step feels like a dialogue, a conversation between past and present, between species, between instinct and strategy. The plain stretches ahead, quiet but alive with echoes. Faint tufts of crushed grass indicate where giant sloths paused, their slow movements leaving long, curved gouges. Birds circle overhead, indifferent, while distant mammoth bellows punctuate the quiet. You press your hand into a mammoth track, feeling the cold wetness and depth beneath your palm, a tactile bridge to a time long past. Each impression carries more than weight. It carries life, choices, and the echoes of survival strategies refined over millennia. As the rain eases, you see the trail begin to fade entirely. Footprints merge with soft mud, shallow depressions flatten, and water reflects the gray sky. It's a quiet erasure, a natural reminder that time and elements reclaim every trace of life eventually. You breathe deeply, appreciating the fleeting yet enduring beauty of what you've witnessed. Evening descends, and the landscape softens under the dim light. You take a final glance at the area where mammoths once wandered, humans once plotted, and predators once prowled. The mud holds the faint memory of life, but soon even that will be gone. It's a meditation on impermanence. Everything leaves a mark, but nothing lasts forever. You let your pace slow, the world around you softening in both sight and sound, carrying the echoes of giants and humans, predators and prey, together in a silent, vanishing harmony. The rain fades completely, leaving only the soft scent of damp earth and crushed leaves. You settle on a rise, feeling the gentle slope beneath your legs, listening to the distant drip of water from leaves. The footprints are almost gone now, erased by time and weather, but their memory lingers. You imagine the humans who walked here, the giants who moved with monumental grace, and the predators who watched silently, their presence marked only by faint impressions in mud. It's a reminder that life, no matter how powerful or small, leaves traces that endure longer than moments, yet still fade eventually. Slowly, the sky lightens, casting muted shadows that stretch across flattened impressions. You feel a deep calm, noticing the softness in the air, the gentle rustle of leaves, and the subtle symphony of the natural world reclaiming its space. Each sensation reminds you that the land has always been alive, that every creature and human left its story, and that these stories continue to exist even after physical traces vanish. Your breathing slows, matching the rhythm of the quiet plain. You imagine the footprints merging with soil, water, and time, a seamless transition from presence to memory. It's comforting, a gentle whisper that life's marks, however temporary, are meaningful. You picture distant eyes in the future, discovering these traces, piecing together stories from the faintest impressions, marveling at the connection between humans and giants. As night approaches, you let your senses relax completely. The wind is soft, carrying earthy scents, and the world seems to exhale along with you. Every step you traced, every mark you imagined, fades into the gentle quiet, leaving only a lingering sense of wonder. You feel the vastness, the depth, and the quiet patience of the prehistoric landscape. And with that, your mind begins to drift, soothed by echoes of footsteps long past, giant shapes, and the soft hush of time reclaiming all.